At the CCP 18th National Congress, if you asked who was the most dazzling official in China's bureaucracy born after 1960, most people would say Hu Chunhua and Sun Zhenkai. At the 19th National Congress, if you asked who was the most dazzling post-60s cadre, most people would say Hu Chunhua, Chen Minner, and Ding Xuexiang. At the 20th National Congress, if you asked who was the most dazzling post-60s cadre, then there is only one answer, Ding Xuexiang. So how did Ding Xuexiang, over a little more than 10 years, go from a vice ministerial level cadre to defeating a crowd of competitors step by step, pulling off a comeback, and becoming the only post-60s member of the Standing Committee at the 20th National Congress? How did he win Xi Jinping's trust? Today, we're going to tell Ding Xuexiang's story. Ding Xuexiang was born in 1962 in Nantong City, Jiangsu Province. Nantong is a place that produces outstanding people. Besides the famous Late King top imperial exam laureate Zhang Jian, there is also a Nantong clique in CCP politics. Representative leaders include former State Council Vice Premier Liu Yandong, former Vice Chairwoman of the NPC Standing Committee Gu Ziyulian, former President of the Supreme People's Court Cao Jianming, former CMC member Chen Bing, former CPPCC Vice Chairman and Auditor General of the National Audit Office Lai Jinhua, and so on. In 1978, 16-year-old little Ding was admitted to the Northeast Heavy Machinery Institute, which was under the First Ministry of Machine Building. This institute was not some diploma mill. It was spun off from the Heavy Machinery School of Harbin Institute of Technology. Among senior schoolmates from the same department, there was also a talented figure named Zhang Chengxian, who later became party secretary of Xinjiang, and among his teachers there was Zhu Tainong, who later became a vice chairman of the NPC Standing Committee. After graduating in July 1982, Comrade Little Ding was assigned to the Shanghai Institute of Materials Research within the same system. This little-known unit actually had quite a pedigree. Back then, the First Ministry of Machine Building set up many research institutions in Shanghai. The Institute of Materials Research was one of them, and there was also a brother institution called the Institute of Electrical Science, where Jiang Zemin once worked. So, Ding Xuexiang was a genuine product of the First Ministry of Machine Building. He came out of the same system as Comrade Old Jiang. Over the next 17 years, Comrade Little Ding stayed at the Institute of Materials Research. From an ordinary researcher to deputy director of the office, from youth league secretary and office director to head of the propaganda department, then from director of office No. 9 to deputy director of the institute, he finally rose in 1996 to become institute director, and at age 34 he became a full department bureau level cadre. During those 17 years, Ding Xuexiang was not doing scientific research. He was doing administration and management work, and for quite a long stretch he served as office director. This was his first secretary experience, laying a solid foundation for his later work in the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee and the party's general office at the central level. In a research institute where scientific work is the mainstream, being able to rise from office director to eventually become the top leader as institute director is very difficult. It also shows that Ding Xuexiang's work capability and coordination ability earned broad recognition from everyone. Ding Xuexiang's early path was very similar to Hu Chunhua, Zhao Leji, and Sun Zhenkai. He grew quietly in a marginal department or region with limited power and limited competition. Hu Chunhua and Zhao Leji did it on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, a place most people do not want to go. Sun Zhenkai and Ding Xuexiang both did it in a niche professional field, one in an agricultural research institution, the other in a materials research public institution. Compared with mainstream party and government organs, the power was not big, but the competition was small, and it was possible to resolve rank levels quickly. In Mao Zedong's words, this is the countryside encircling the cities. In 1998, the Ministry of Machine Building was abolished, and the Shanghai Institute of Materials Research was placed under the Shanghai Science and Technology Commission system. The following year, 37-year-old Ding Xuexiang became a Shanghai municipal-managed cadre and took the position of Deputy Director of the Shanghai Science and Technology Commission at the full bureau level. Shanghai's political arena at the time was not calm. Party Secretary Huang Zhu was Jiang's former Secretary General and a traditional bureaucrat, while Mayor Zhu Guangdi was Zhu Rongji's favored man and came from a scientist background. The two had very different ways of thinking. Zhu Guangdi greatly appreciated Ding Xuexiang, who came from research institutions, and strongly pushed for him to become district mayor of Jiabi district. Although it was a lower-tier district in Shanghai, it still counted as having experience governing a locality and filled in a segment of his resume. Soon, Zhu Guangdi reached retirement age. It is said that Huang Zhu also painted Zhu Guangdi in a bad light in front of Old Jiang. Old Jiang then transferred Zhu Guangdi to the Chinese Academy of Engineering to serve as its president, and let Huang Zhu's junior, Chen Liangyu, take over as mayor. Fortunately, Zhu Guangdi's assistant Jiang Xixian was transferred to become head of the organization department of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee, and Ding Xuexiang was also recommended to serve as deputy head of the organization department and director of the personnel bureau. From this we can see that although Ding Xuexiang was also from Shanghai in his early years, he did not know little Jiang back then, and he could not be considered part of old Jiang's junior people's camp either. Therefore, at that time he still could not be counted as old Jiang's man, nor could he be counted as the mainstream faction of the Shanghai clique. Rather, he was a non-mainstream faction in Shanghai officialdom. So he had no chance to take the classic promotion route from district mayor to district party secretary and then to municipal leadership. Not having served as a district party secretary is the point most often criticized in his career. Of course, Ding Xuexiang's temperament was relatively mild. He was low-key in how he conducted himself. He showed respect to whichever leader, and he worked seriously. The outside impression was that he was a science and technology cadre, so his factional coloring was not strong. Although Zhu Guangdi valued him highly, Huang Zhu and Chen Liangyu would not dislike him. They just would not let Ding Xuexiang enter their inner circle. During this period, he also had more contact with Han Zheng, and Han Zheng also had a fairly good opinion of him. In 2006, Ding Xuexiang's career encountered a new turning point. After the Chen Liangyu chaos broke out, Sun Luyi, director of the Municipal Party Committee General Office, also fell. After Mayor Han Zheng took charge of the Municipal Party Committee's work, he needed to transfer in someone who did not belong to Chen Liangyu's faction to succeed Sun Luyi. Ding Xuexiang, as someone outside Chen Liangyu's faction, got his chance. He was transferred to serve as Deputy Secretary General of the Municipal Party Committee and Director of the General Office, returning to his old craft office work. In 2007, Xi Jinping was suddenly transferred to become Shanghai's party secretary, and he brought only one person from Zhejiang, Zhang Sheijun. At that time, Shanghai's political arena was in a state of panic, because it was the previous party secretary who had gotten into trouble, and almost all senior Shanghai cadres had various degrees of interaction with him. They anxiously awaited the new party secretary's judgment, and facing the gray at Shanghai, Xi Jinping himself also felt uncertain. He did not know these cadres' historical situations. Ding Xuexiang, as director of the Municipal Party Committee General Office, was among the earliest people Xi Jinping met in Shanghai, and also one of the people he met most. Xi Jinping could only look within his own friends for people who understood Shanghai's political world and seek their advice. He thought of Zhu Guangdi. After Xi Jinping began serving as Zhejiang's party secretary in 2003, he invited Zhu Guangdi, then president of the Chinese Academy of Engineering, to lead a delegation to inspect Zhejiang, and he also specially invited Zhu Guangdi to lecture Zhejiang's cadres across the province. Zhu grew up in Hangzhou and had deep feelings for Zhejiang. As both a scientist and a politician, he explained many principles in an easy-to-understand way and thoroughly conquered Xi Jinping, an elementary school-level humanities student. From that time on, Xi Jinping treated Zhu Guangdi as a top advisor and consultant. Many years later, when he decided to build Xuexiang, he also made Zhu Guangdi the chief designer of Xuexiang. Zhu Guangdi served as Shanghai mayor for many years, knew Shanghai very well, and was relatively upright as a person. He gave the new Shanghai party secretary, Xi Jinping, a lot of advice. Zhu also recommended several people to Xi Jinping along the way, and one of them was Deng Xuexiang, effectively providing an endorsement for Deng Xuexiang in front of Xi Jinping. There was also a person named Yin Hong, who was Zhu Guangdi's student back when Zhu was at Shanghai University of Technology, and he was later also recommended to Xi Jinping. So, Yin Hong and Deng Xuexiang could be considered fellow disciples, senior and junior schoolmates, emotionally close. The situation Xi Jinping faced when he first arrived in Shanghai was very much like the situation Jiang Zemin faced when he arrived in the center in 1989. Xi Jinping faced the aftermath of Chen Liangyu's downfall. Jiang Zemin faced the aftermath of Zhao Ziyang's collapse. Xi Jinping had to face two bosses, Jiang and Hu. Jiang Zemin had to face two bosses, Deng Xiaoping and Chen Yun. Xi Jinping faced the local strongman Han Zheng, who was hosting Shanghai's work and whose loyalty was unclear. Jiang Zemin faced the local strongman Lai Peng, who was hosting the center's work and whose loyalty was unclear, either could set a trap at any time. Xi Jinping brought one Zhang Sheyijun to Shanghai. Jiang Zemin brought one Zheng Qinghang to the center. In such a complicated situation, Xi Jinping encountered Deng Xuexiang, director of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee General Office. Jiang Zemin encountered Wen Jiabao, director of the Central General Office, and Deng Xuexiang's performance was just like Wen Jiabao's back then. He did everything he could to help Xi Jinping familiarize himself with Shanghai's situation, racking his brains to offer ideas to the new master, helping him get through the hardest transition period. Deng Xuexiang had two advantages. One was that he was familiar with general office work. The other was that he had once served as deputy head of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee Organization Department and director of the Personnel Bureau. He understood Shanghai cadres' situations and could give Xi Jinping many personnel-related suggestions. For Deng Xuexiang, the most urgent task was to assist Xi Jinping in convening Shanghai's 9th Party Congress. This Party Congress was the most important task and test that the center gave Xi Jinping, and it also had a decisive effect on stabilizing Shanghai's bureaucracy, which was skittish after the Chen Liangyu chaos. Xi Jinping arrived in Shanghai in March 2007, and the Party Congress was held in May. There were only 2 months of preparation time, extremely tight. This was also Deng Xuexiang's big exam, and it was the busiest 2 months of his life. He assisted Xi Jinping in holding 4 symposiums, led the team to race against time to complete the drafting of the Congress report and the conference services work, and almost perfectly completed this nearly impossible task. He also passed Xi Jinping's test of his ability. It was also at this Congress that Deng Xuexiang became a member of the Standing Committee of the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee and Secretary General. Not only did he complete a perilous leap to vice ministerial level, He also formally became Xi Jinping's chief secretary, opening a new chapter of his life. Xi Jinping stayed as Shanghai party secretary for only 7 months. Other than holding the party congress, he actually did not have time to do any major things. At that time, it was half a year before the 17th Party Congress. The bigwigs were already planning the personnel layout for the next 5 years, and Jiang Zemin and Zheng Qinghang had already planned to recommend Xi Jinping as the crown prince. Therefore, Xi Jinping's performance in Shanghai was related to whether he could pass the test of the top levels, and related to whether he could be smoothly pushed forward as the crown prince at the 17th Party Congress. The key point in this was not what he truly did, but what kind of reputation and word of mouth he left to the outside world. Xuexiang quickly figured out what the boss needed and formulated a series of measures around that need. First, create a persona of being good at consultation. Under Xi Jinping's guidance, Xuexiang took the lead in drafting documents such as the rules of procedure for municipal party standing committee meetings and the rules for municipal party committee work. The goal was to leave the outside world with the impression that he was good at democratic consultation, in contrast to Chen Lianyu's arbitrary one-man rule. Second, shape a reputation for being good at listening and caring about people's livelihoods. This came from a basic assumption. As a big leader, the more people you directly come into contact with, the more people will speak well of you. Therefore, Xuexiang designated every Thursday as Xi Jinping's investigation and research day, helped Xi Jinping develop a massive research plan, and went through departments across Shanghai from top to bottom. Xuexiang also demonstrated his strong coordination and execution ability. Whatever idea Xi Jinping proposed, Director Ding could always quickly find a workable implementation plan. Third, set typical examples in party building work. What differs between Shanghai and Zhejiang is that state-owned enterprises are stronger, and the proportion of cities is larger than the countryside. Therefore, Xuexiang assisted Xi Jinping in focusing on party building in Seoul and party building in communities, and turned both into brands. Of course, this is the organization department's core responsibility. And as the Secretary General, the General Manager of the household, the Municipal Party Secretary General, is also an important planner. As Secretary General, in addition to traditional departments such as the General Office and the Research Office, Xuexiang also oversaw 3 virtual offices: the Office of the Municipal Party Financial and Economic Leading Group, the Office of the Municipal Party Decision-Making Consultation Committee, and the Office of the Municipal Party Party Building Work Leading Group. These 3 offices became Xi Jinping's think tank and provided many reference opinions for the municipal party committee's decisions. At the 17th Party Congress in 2007, Xi Jinping, as expected, was selected as a member of the Politburo Standing Committee and formally promoted to the next generation's crown prince. After Xi Jinping went to Beijing, in order to avoid giving people something to talk about, he still only brought Zhang Xuexiang, this close personal secretary, and did not bring Xuexiang. Xi Jinping was very familiar with Chinese history and knew that being the crown prince is actually a dangerous position. If you do it well, you may successfully ascend. If you do it badly, you may end up disgraced and ruined. Therefore, in the 5 years after the 17th Party Congress, Xi Jinping kept compressing his own desire to perform and his desire for power, and seldom expressed his opinions publicly. In terms of personnel, Xi Jinping also rarely spoke up for the promotion of people in his own faction, even though he was the standing committee member in charge of the Central Organization Department. Thus, during those 5 years, the future high-flying Xi faction figures could only develop on their own. Some people did not even last until Xi Jinping formally took power before retiring. At that time, Xi Jinping also made no statement about his political secretary, accepting arrangements and recommendations from others. His political secretaries at the time were mainly He Yiding and Xi Jinping. He Yiding was born in 1952 from Hanjiang, Shaanxi. In 1979, he entered the history department of Beijing Normal University, and after graduating entered the Central General Office, rising from Deputy Division Chief all the way to Executive Deputy Director of the Central Policy Research Office. Influenced by his college teacher Kai Gong, He Yiding loved calligraphy and painting. His wife Liu Ding had long worked at the Central Propaganda Department and later served as head of the Discipline Inspection Group at Kafko Group, an impressive big sister. Xi Jinping was a political secretary who had followed Zheng Qinghang for many years. During his time at the Shanghai Municipal Policy Research Office, he participated in the famous Huangfu Ping Group and wrote a series of political commentary articles. Zheng Qinghang was one of the main planners and pushers behind Xi Jinping's rise as crown prince at the time, and he had enormous influence over old Jiang. He recommended his own secretary Xi Jinping to assist Xi Jinping, both to help Xi Jinping and with the intent to influence or even control Xi Jinping ideologically. At that time, Xi Jinping, still playing dumb to eat the tiger though deeply disgusted inside, did not dare say no. He could only accept the whole package. After the 17th Party Congress, whenever Xi Jinping went on visits abroad, met people, conducted research, or did inspections, Xi Jinping almost always accompanied him. In the 6 years after the 17th Party Congress, Deng Xuexiang stayed in Shanghai and experienced 2 more Shanghai Party secretaries. The first was Xuexiang, who succeeded Xi Jinping. Xuexiang's family background was extremely prominent. He himself was Deng Pufeng's sworn brother and once served as general manager of Deng Pufeng's Kanghua Company, with deep ties to the Deng family. His older brother Yu Qiansheng defected abroad, and at the 14th Party Congress Yu also unexpectedly failed to be elected as a Central Committee member, stalling his career for several years. Because his father was Huang Jing, an old minister of the First Ministry of Machine Building and an old superior of Jiang Zemin, he later welcomed a second spring in his career. Xuexiang's family also had an old relationship with Xi Jinping's family. When Xi Jinping's elder sister Kai Kiao first started doing business, she relied on Xuexiang's care. Xi Jinping also regarded Xuexiang as an old big brother. The two were long-time political allies. During Xuexiang's 5 years governing Shanghai, Shanghai's economic growth had already started hitting a bottleneck, and the growth rate slowed markedly. Secretary Yu did not have many achievements in economic terms. The biggest achievement on the surface should be the successful hosting of the Shanghai World Expo, which of course could not be done without Deng Xuexiang, the great housekeeper, coordinating. Under the table, Xuexiang's biggest achievement was further tightening his relationship with Jiang Zemin and successfully locking in his ticket into the 18th Party Congress Standing Committee. This was of course carried out with Deng Xuexiang's assistance, and Deng Xuexiang helped Xuexiang plan several things. First, he planned the publication of the book series Sunrise Over River Flowers, The Young Jiang Zemin in Shanghai, telling the story of young Jiang Zemin's work experiences during his Shanghai period. The planning of this set of books began around 2007, and the director of the editorial committee was none other than Deng Xuexiang, who was Shanghai Municipal Party Committee Secretary General at the time. This was the first Jiang Zemin biography compiled with a local government taking the lead. It also specially recorded Jiang Zemin's interactions with Xuexiang's father Huang Jing, and at the same time flattered both Jiang and Yu. Through compiling this book, Deng Xuexiang came into contact with many figures in Jiang Zemin's circle of friends, learned about this Shanghai big boss, and successfully won Jiang Zemin's recognition. Second, he fully cooperated with the Chinese Academy of Sciences to complete the Shanghai Synchrotron Radiation Facility, a major national scientific project. The CAS vice president responsible for this project was precisely Jiang Zemin's eldest son, Jiang Mianheng, and this was also the last major project he oversaw before retiring from CAS. This project was the largest big science apparatus since the founding of the PRC, extremely difficult, requiring coordination and cooperation across the board. Shanghai's counterpart contact was precisely the research background Municipal Party Secretary General Ding Xuexiang. During the facility's implementation, Ding Xuexiang's coordination ability and spirit of dedication deeply moved Jiang's eldest son. This also became one of the reasons Ding Xuexiang later oversaw science and technology after becoming vice premier. Third, he kept a tight focus on Shanghai Jiao University. SJTU is Old Jiang's alma mater and has countless connections with Old Jiang. In his later years, Old Jiang always paid close attention to SJTU development. Ding Xuexiang arranged for Xuexiang to give a party lecture at SJTU, and repeatedly arranged for Yu to conduct research visits to SJTU and its affiliated enterprises, and helped SJTU establish the Advanced Institute of Finance. Through these under-the-table operations, Ding Xuexiang not only helped Xuexiang raise his status in Jiang Zemin's eyes, but also squeezed his way into Jiang Zemin's circle. Before this, Ding Xuexiang had actually always been a branch line within the Shanghai clique belonging to Zhu Guangdi and Zhu Rongji's circle, and had little intersection with Jiang Zemin's circle. After more than a decade of operations, Ding Xuexiang finally became someone recognized by Jiang Zemin. In 2012, Xuexiang successfully entered the Politburo Standing Committee. After many years of running as the perennial runner-up, Han Zheng finally took over as Shanghai Party Secretary. At this time, Ding Xuexiang was transferred to become Shanghai Political and Legal Affairs Commission Secretary, and became an alternate member at the 18th Party Congress. And at this time, the Post-60s Hu Chunhua and Sun Zhenkai had already entered the Politburo. Chen Minner and Lai Qiang, who was born in 1959, had already become Central Committee members. Ding Xuexiang at this time was far behind his peers, and no one could have predicted his comeback 10 years later. Some overseas media said that on the eve of the 18th Party Congress, Xi Jinping had planned to transfer Ding Xuexiang to Beijing, first to serve as a deputy director of the Central General Office to become familiar with the situation, and after the central leadership reshuffle, to be promoted to take over from Ling Jihua. But who would have thought, just when Shanghai was about to hold a party congress for leadership turnover, the then Shanghai vice mayor and police chief Zhang Zubing had originally been planned to be promoted to Shanghai Political and Legal Affairs Commission secretary in the turnover plan. Unexpectedly, someone reported him, and the organization arranged an investigation. Because the Political and Legal Affairs Commission secretary position could not be left vacant, in the rush they had Ding Xuexiang take over as Shanghai Political and Legal Affairs Commission Secretary. This prevented Ding Xuexiang from entering Beijing, and at that time Central General Office Deputy Director Lai Zhanshu then picked up a leak. These reports are pure nonsense. Because when Ling Jihua stepped down, Hu Jintao was still the General Secretary. Xi Jinping simply did not have the power to decide who would be director of the Central General Office. Ding Xuexiang's seniority also absolutely could not have allowed him to be promoted to Central General Office Director at that time. Lai Zhanshu was the only candidate that Jiang, Hu, and Xi could all accept. After the 18th Party Congress, Lai Zhanshu formally took office as director of the Central General Office, and Zhang Sheyijun was arranged to serve as director of the CMC General Office. Around Xi Jinping, there was still a lack of one person for the role of Director of the General Secretary's Office and Director of the State President's Office. This role generally is also concurrently a Deputy Director of the Central General Office, equivalent to Xi Jinping's Chief of Staff, an extremely critical choice. At that time, the main people following Xi Jinping were still He Yiding and Xi Jinping mentioned earlier. By logic, this position should generally come from one of these two. Xi Jinping was relatively high profile and did not know how to restrain himself. He often used the leader's banner to do things and take money, and he also had very close ties with Zhang Qinghang. Xi Jinping found him somewhat annoying, and once he had an opportunity, he pushed him aside. Xi Jinping, on the other hand, appreciated He Yiding very much, but at that time He Yiding was already the executive deputy director of the Central Policy Research Office, having long done pen work. He had neither experience nor interest in the more transactional role of deputy director of the Central General Office. Therefore, Xi Jinping arranged him to be the executive vice president of the Central Party School, letting He Yiding help him occupy the party school as a main base. At the party school, He Yiding, according to Xi Jinping's wishes, planned interview-style biographical works for Xi Jinping at each stage, from the educated youth years to the Shanghai period, rendering Xi Jinping a great service. At this time, Xi Jinping thought of Deng Xuexiang. For the General Secretary's Office Director position, people generally use someone they are relatively familiar with, more trustworthy, and less time needed to break in. Xi Jinping had been very cautious in Beijing during his time as State Vice President and had not formed his own team. In his previous governing experiences, the subordinates he had directly dealt with in Fujian were older and basically had already retired. The subordinates he dealt with in Zhejiang, such as Kai Kai and Lai Qiang, had bigger uses. Huang Kunming was not suitable for this role, and others' rank and seniority were not enough. Deng Xuexiang had once served as his great housekeeper. Trust was not an issue, capability was not an issue. His rank was just right at vice-ministerial level. And then the most important point arrived, Deng Xuexiang's Shanghai background. At that time, the real operator of the 18th Party Congress was Old Jiang. The CCP big boss was still Old Jiang. Xi Jinping understood this deeply. Among all the alternatives, only Deng Xuexiang had directly dealt with Old Jiang, and the relationship was still okay. The Zhejiang period cadres did not meet this point. Choosing Deng Xuexiang helped release goodwill toward the Shanghai side and enhance Shanghai's favorable feelings toward him. Deng Xuexiang could also assist him in communicating with Old Jiang and his family. This was the most important point for Deng Xuexiang to become director of the General Secretary's Office. As for age, Xi Jinping did not place much emphasis when selecting secretaries. As long as you were not at retirement age, it was fine. You can see this from Xi Jinping's standards when he selected secretaries in Fujian. Later, we will specifically talk about Xi Jinping's successive secretaries. Interested friends can take a look. When Jiang Zemin went to Beijing to serve as General Secretary, besides his close personal secretary Jia Tingen, the only person he brought was Zhang Qinghang. Besides Zhang Qinghang's high level of political strategy, more importantly, Zhang Qinghang was familiar with many families of the elder statesmen and could help Jiang Zemin privately collect information and build contacts. On this point, Xuexiang suffered a great loss. He spent a long time working in localities. After entering Beijing, he had no one around him who could communicate with elder statesmen families. So when in early 1989 the elder statesman had already decided to replace him, Xuexiang was still kept in the dark. In Xuexiang and Jiang Zemin's era, the decision-making center was those elder statesmen in Beijing. Therefore, someone like Zhang Qinghang familiar with Beijing was needed. At the time of the 18th Party Congress, the decision-making center was Old Jiang in Shanghai. Therefore, someone who could liaise with old Jiang was needed, and that was the decisive factor for Ding Xuexiang to become director of the General Secretary's office. As for his capability, that was only the second factor. This is how Ding Xuexiang successfully settled Xi Jinping and became director of the president's office. So then, how did Ding Xuexiang go on to take over as director of the Central General Office, and within 5 years rise 3 levels in a row, surpassing Chen Minner, Hu Chunhua, and others, becoming the youngest standing committee member in the CCP? Please watch the next episode, How Ding Xuexiang Defeated Chen Minner. Thank you all for watching.